Hey guys, welcome back to the studio. My name is Keo, and today we're going to be opening up this pair of sneakers. It's an AirMax box. It's been a while since we've done an AirMax, and let's get right to it. Now, of course, if you have been enjoying our channel, please do click like and subscribe to the channel because we have a lot of sneakers coming out. This is the first of like 5 I think I'm gonna do like this week. So if you are enjoying the content, please do click like and subscribe. It does make a difference for us, and thank you much for doing that. And with that, let's open up the sneakers. So this is an AirMax box, special box. It says AirMax here, and it does have the iconic diagonal stripes that were on the AirMax boxes from when I was a kid. So for me, the one that I remember the most would be the AirMax 90, one of my favorite AirMax sneakers ever. On the other side, also some stripes. And over here, you have the title of the sneaker, or the name of the sneaker, which is the Dn8. And then you have some dots here. So the 4 dots are iconic of the original AirMax big bubble sneaker. And so here they went with another 4 big bubbles on the previous sneaker, which is the AirMax Dn. And the Dn8 adds the second 4 bubbles. So that makes it a 8 bubble sneaker. Over here, we have the sizing label. It says AirMax Dn8 in the black/fierce purple colorway, size 9.5, which is my size. Some special paper. It says Dynamic Air 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you haven't counted it, it says SS25. So I think that's spring summer 2025. And then you have some drawings of the air bubble. We'll get into that later. Okay, so before we deep dive into the sneaker, let's take a quick look at this paper. So at the start, it says Dynamic Air and the numbers. Then you have a picture of the air unit. We'll talk more about that later. And then you have a breakdown, which is kind of like in engineering drawings, they call it an exploded schematic, and where you take the parts and you split them up. So here we have the sneaker complete, and then it has breakdowns of the midsole and air units and this kind of support heel counter plate. Okay, so you have the midsole, and directly under the midsole is the air units. You have 2 very big air units, high volume air units. There's this thing in the middle which looks like the logo. And then straight to the outsole. So in between the air units and the outsole, there does not appear to be any additional foam. Then over here on the right side, it says high pressure, low pressure, and high pressure. So basically, the high pressure units are on the toe and the heel, and then you have low pressure in the mid part of the sneaker. That's cool. And then over here, you have a little drawing kind of like explaining how air moves around inside of the chambers. And we'll talk about the sneakers. All right, so this is the AirMax Dn8 in a fierce purple. Now it does come with this tag that says that this sneaker is made with at least 20% recycled content. If you don't know, Nike has this big push to move to zero, meaning as little waste as possible, or zero waste at some point. As part of that commitment, one of the things that they did is that they started making air units in America. So the air units themselves are actually made in America oftentimes, and then they get moved to assembly factories in places like Vietnam or Indonesia. This particular sneaker is made in Vietnam. So the Nike Dn8 is a follow-up to last year's Nike Dn, and the Dn only had 4 bubbles. They're still releasing the Dn, the original Dn. I think last week they came out with the Lego collaboration, which is all yellow. And this is the Dn8, which is really rad looking with all of these air units. Now let's talk about the sneaker, starting with the outsole. So the outsole is done in a hard rubber tread, and you see some callouts to kind of show you where the technology is in this sneaker. It's quite reminiscent of the Tuned Air, for example, and you have these red dots that line the outside. And then down the middle, you have a translucent rubber. over each of the air units. Now this is the best place to explain how DN works, and it is an implementation of a form of Nike Air that they've been doing since the 90s. So sometimes people say that like, oh, Nike is not doing new technology. What they're doing is refined technology. It's probably a good way to think about it. They're doing EVA foams better than ever. They're doing Zoom Air better than ever. And they're doing Nike Air better than ever. But it just seems sometimes like they're doing the same thing over and over because they were so far ahead to begin with and everyone's just kind of catching up now. So what you have is that the higher PSI units are in the toe and the heel, and then lower PSI here in the middle. And what it does is when you take a step, air goes through these channels and exchanges position, basically, sending it to and from the different chambers. So it's more a stabilizing cushioning than it is, say, a comfort cushioning, which you can get with a lot of supercritical and crazy foams that we have now, like Zoom X. So moving up to the midsole, you have the air units directly on top of the rubber, of the outsole rubber, 8 units, and they're basically in a forefoot pod and a heel pod. Those are in orange, and then directly above it, you have a midsole foam. This feels like an EVA foam, which is actually surprisingly soft. Now, this is something that I've loved with AirMax implementation since around the year 2000 with the 2090, was their implementation of foams on top of AirMax. So here you have some EVA foam that runs over the top to help stabilize aggressive bounce that you can get from an AirMax unit. Now for sneakerheads, you know that AirMax is not the most bouncy, cushy cushioning available. You know, there are other technologies for that like Zoom X, React X, Zoom Air even. But what AirMax really brings is stability of that cushioning, meaning great foams bottom out after a while, and kind of putting them together with the AirMax means that this sneaker is going to have a lot more longevity to it. The AirMax units are going to be able to take some of that damage, take some of that pressure off of the foams, and they kind of work in conjunction with each other to make a more stable ride for longer. Moving up the upper of the sneaker, you have a textile upper that is synthetic, and then some fuse holding it together. Over here, it's like a faux felt. And then towards the heel, you have this heel counter that's made of it's either hard rubber or TPU. I think this is TPU. And then this nice jewel swoosh here by the ankle collar. Now, along both the lateral and the medial sides, you have these loops that connect to the air units. They're fused and they hold looser mesh in place there. So if I put my finger inside there, you can't actually see through this upper. So that's a breathability feature that will allow the sneaker to cool down your feet as you're using them. This colorway, the Fierce Purple, has a darker purple here in the base, and it looks to move lighter, kind of little gradient fade or ombre from the heel kind of diagonally upwards towards the tongue. Speaking of the tongue has a, oh nice, it's quite padded. The lace loop does not go all the way through. It's attached on the front of the tongue. And then you have these oval style laces in black, no extra laces included. A few more things on the medial side, you see the seam here. So the upper is basically woven into one complete piece, and this is the only place where it is kind of attached together as it's wrapped around the last. Oh no, I may have spoken out of turn. There is a seam here in the heel as well. And then on the toe cap, you have some rubber that's been fused on to protect the toe. Inside, if you pull out the insole, I believe this is a Dura Pontex. Yep. So Dura Pontex is a stiffer style of insole versus like an Ortholite. So that's going to take the shape of your foot. So it means it's going to break in really nicely. A few more points of branding. You do have this nice little orange swoosh accent here on the toe box at the bottom of the lace loops. This Nike Air DN old school style logo on the back, and a DN here on the middle of the outsole. Sizing. So these sneakers do fit true to size, meaning I am a natural 9.5 and the sneakers are 9.5. They fit really well with a little bit of loose space here in the toe and just a tiny bit here in the heel. All right, so Been wearing it all day on my day off. Sufficiently stable and comfortable, which is what I look for in a day-to-day shoe. Not too cushy, something that I can get a lot of steps in with. And these are kind of perfect for it. I will say that there's a little bit of a break in time. True to size, if you have wide feet, do go up half a size, because there is a little pinch point here in the toe, not on the pinky side, but on the big toe side. And it has to do with like the way that the sneaker is structured and the way that the air units go across the bottom of your foot. So because they go that way, it kind of creates a natural like tank motion where the shoe wants to flex along those lines. But as a result, the stiffer parts in the upper on the toe have to kind of hinge against that same point of articulation, and that results in a little bit of pinching in the toe section. Not a big deal. It'll probably soften as the shoes break in, but if it bothers you, you might want to go up half a size if your feet are wider and you have maybe a bigger big toe. Now, I've only been wearing them a couple days, and I think they have a very underrated upper. So sometimes you see uppers like this and they look very straightforward and very, not minimalist, but you know, there is only one giant panel to this thing if you don't include all of the holes that they made for the breathability. So usually when you see a sneaker like this that doesn't have so much build up to it, it's mostly this one piece of fabric with the vents kind of cut into there, you're never so sure how comfortable it'll be. But this sneaker does feature a gusseted kind of like a bootie on the inside. And that means that it's gonna hug very close to your foot and give it a lot of comfort, kind of by giving you not a tight fit, not a snug fit, but a wrapped feeling, if that makes any sense. You don't feel your feet jiggling inside of the sneaker. And for me, that's one of the most important things to a comfortable upper, is you want it to feel like it's one with your foot and that you're not, you know, the shoe isn't shaking around, you know, your foot isn't shaking around inside the shoe. What are these sneakers for? So they are a sportswear release. Most Nike Air these days are used for lifestyle and sportswear fashion uses, and things like Zoom Air get used for, you know, high performance gear. Try to answer some of the questions that I know I'm gonna get asked. Can I use these for running? The answer is not really. Now, could you? Yes. If you had one pair of shoes, you're on vacation, you need to run on a treadmill in your hotel or something, yeah, for short, light runs, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, it shouldn't be a problem if you're just trying to get fitness. If you're trying to, say, break personal bests, set new records, then I would not recommend this pair of shoes for that. These are day-to-day, go to work, go to school, you know, go out for dinner, casual sportswear lifestyle sneakers. And that's about it for the AirMax Dn8. So if you have any questions, ask them in the comment section down below. I try to answer them right away. If you do have a pair of these sneakers, please feel free to leave a comment down below, because people love to hear what you guys have to say as well. With that, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I wish you guys good luck, good health, great pickups. Peace.